And it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes, and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And coming up in just a minute, or even less, is Alejandro Rojas with the UFO news. And I want to give a big shout-out to, actually, he's been the show's biggest supporter, Phil. Now, Phil is somewhere in Michigan, and he's on a fishing trip, and I think he's been skunked. There's no fish, so I'm going to give a shout-out to his buddies with him, Gary Hengenman, Paul Brown, and, of course, Phil Sanders. And Phil also wants Lou to know that he should have come. It's all his fault. Anyway, thanks, Phil. I hope you have better luck after this. All right, so coming up for a guest tonight is Ben Hansen, the one and only Ben Hansen. And after that, in hour 2, we're going to do something entirely different we've never done before. And that is, we are going to play some clips from the Faded Discs. Now, this is an archive of early UFO interviews and talks from some icons of the past. Wendy Connors put this together, and Michael Lauk, who you know used to be on this show, is still writing blogs. He wrote a blog on that. That's a fresh new blog right up on our website, podcastufo.com, and all the links to these archives are in that blog. So, hour 1, Ben Hansen. Hour 2, I'm going to play some clips. You can call in if you'd like. We can discuss these clips. You can chat room, discuss this, anything you want. When I said Phil was the biggest supporter of the show, I meant financially. Peggy Shunning out in Las Vegas is our biggest supporter as far as help. Thank you, Peggy. She helps us with the Facebook page. Now, supporters can listen to the second part of the show, and I want to thank you for all your support and listening, whether you can help us out or not. I appreciate each and every one of you, but for just $1 a month or more, you can listen to the second part of the show. Just go to podcastufo.com. All right, we're ready to roll in the news. And how you doing, Alejandro?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Long time no talk, man.
Yeah, it's been hours.
I know, yeah. So what is there anything new in the news?
There's lots of new stuff, and the advantage of, you doing your show midweek, whereas I do mine at the beginning of the week, is that there are updates to the news that we've discussed on my show. So one of those updates, though, has to do with the Roswell slides. Will you allow me to speak about the Roswell slides? Momentarily.
I will give you a mulligan, yes.
The great thing about this is that they're going to get the latest and greatest information from you. On the show here. So this is kind of cool. Shepard Johnson, who you know, I know, we see him on UFO Updates. He's written some stories for us at Open Minds. He did a FOIA for the National Park Service because of the evidence of when the placard was deciphered in the Roswell slides. It said, this was a mummy or a mummified body discovered by S.L. Palmer. It was then discovered that this was found in the late 1800s by S.L. Palmer, and then it spent some time at Mesa Verde Park and then at Montezuma's park, both national parks. Well, he got back a 160-page document chronicling kind of the history of this thing with a bunch of information and a photo. The photo looks very, very similar to the Roswell slides. And so it pretty much just kind of seals up everything because it talks about this S.L. Palmer, body. And it does confirm, essentially, that the body was reburied. It was given back to the Native Americans and reburied in the late 90s when these things were returned to the Native Americans so they could do that. Because, of course, digging up people's ancestries and just kind of showing them on display is considered a bit disrespectful, and I don't think anybody can blame Native Americans for feeling that way. So they wanted to rebury those bodies, and they were able to do that in the late 90s. So what's interesting, of course, is Jaime Maussan has said he'll give $10,000 to anybody who is able to crack the case, $5,000 to anybody who produces a picture. Someone else produced a picture in the past which was valid, but for some reason he said it was a painting. And now that Shepard has done this, I think Shepard's deserving of the $10,000. However, I don't think he will receive it. Jaime Maussan still very quickly, without research, is just saying no, that information is wrong. And it's frustrating, but that's what he's doing. But there is an update. That's interesting. Everybody keeps saying, the curtain is closed. It's the end of the story. And I don't know why they keep saying that, because it never is the end of the story, but that's the latest and greatest.
Show me the mummy. Well, yeah. If you dial back this podcast several episodes ago, I mentioned that the mummy was probably reburied. You can actually hear me say that. Wow, that was kind of a guess.
Really?
Yeah, because I know that they did that with like you're saying, Native Americans. There's a lot of if you research that, there's been a lot of history of people digging these things up, taking them, and actually being prosecuted and just spending time in prison for messing with remains of Native Americans. So
yeah,
there's a lot of laws protecting that right now.
It's not a cool thing to do.
No, it's not. But wow, so that's this is it. This is the final curtain. Yes.
Who knows? I doubt it.
Yeah, and I
know there's going to be a radio show tomorrow where they're all going to talk, and I'm sure they're not going to concede. I don't know why. I mean, the placard, their own picture was deciphered. The thing looks extremely familiar. Now they're saying that their picture shows a larger body, but the body is exactly, I mean, even the mouth and the eyes, one eye is closed, one eye is partially open. I mean, it is the same exact thing.
Now, there's if you look at the original slide, you'll see there's above the, I think it's the left eye, there's a little bit of an angle, I don't want to say scar, but a marking. And if you look on the pictures that were found recently, there's the same marking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it pretty much covers, it's got to be the same.
Yeah, I think, there are so many similarities. I mean, that it's the same thing. So, I mean, it's really, to me, really silly at this point to be arguing against all of these great discoveries. And I wrote this in a post that it's frustrating that the Roswell Slides Research Group has gotten bashed by the supporters of the slides and claim that they were hoaxing things, because never have they hoaxed. And they have really been doing a professional and thorough investigation, and a much, much better investigation that was done by the people with the slides, unfortunately. And I'm
yes.
not, some of those researchers with the slides I respect, but they can learn something from the Roswell Slides Group. And I know these guys, they're not hoaxers. They may be ornery at sometimes, but they are careful researchers.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I think George Knapp said it the best, that the UFO community took care of itself and did what they should have done, and that is in researching these slides.
Right, exactly. I agree 100%. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, and he said the UFO community is not dead.
No.
People have said that this is a doom. It's not a doom at all.
Not at all. And Nick Pope wrote a big thing saying, hey, guys, this is a debacle and it's ridiculous. And I don't know why anybody would think it wasn't anything but a body in a museum. But the media also saw that, and they could care less about this story. And there was maybe one media story in the UK that made fun of the whole thing. But that's it. The media has not paid attention to this whole thing. So besides UFOers, Nobody really knows about it.
Yeah, that's a lucky break for us.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah. Yep. So what else is going on?
Well, you talked on my show about this UFO over Loch Ness. That was your theory was that these UFOs were possibly Loch Ness monsters or coming to see the Loch Ness monster or something like that. I thought that theory was a little wild.
Maybe, yeah.
It's a little out there. But there's actually been more discovery on this case.
Oh.
So what happened is in April, this family, the Betts, Alan and Anna and Anna's parents all were vacationing out Loch Ness next to that castle, that beautiful castle you see in the pictures. Yeah, I have a difficulty saying it correctly, but something like that. It was raining really hard. Supposedly, when the rain stopped, Mom went outside, took a picture of the scenery, and you can see the rain off in the distance. And in this picture, she has these two little lights. They didn't see that at first. They say their dog was barking strangely, but they didn't notice anything peculiar until the family looked at the photos, a couple months later, just recently, and they said, oh, my gosh, look at these UFOs. So, they say that they took multiple pictures and this wasn't in other pictures, so they don't believe what some have said is some kind of muck on the lens or something like that. And so the mystery is, what are these? Well, you know what? Right before I walked into the room, I posted my version of this story on Open Minds, and someone sent me a link of someone who essentially seemingly has debunked this whole thing. So,
let's hear the debunk.
And I think they've got it. So what they're saying is it's probably a reflection of a light, kind of from inside the house. So even though the mom said she went outside, there's evidence in the picture that she didn't. So this person zoomed in on the picture and was able to show that it looks like there are reflections of the curtains on the light or on the picture. And if you look carefully, it looks like you can see that. And he was actually in this room, the same room that they were in, and there was a certain kind of light that he was able to show has the same shape as what's in the photo. One of the arguments is, well, why are there two? Well, he noticed that it's probably a double-paned window. Yeah, and there are many examples that not only he found but others have posted of kind of this reflecting light phenomena doubling because of double-paned windows. I think he's cracked the case.
I think so, too.
Yeah, I know. So what's funny is for our UFO report that we do every week, we're about to interview Lee Spiegel, and he wrote about this as well. He spoke with the couple, so we're going to ask him about what they talked about, but I'm going to have to break this news to him.
Yeah. Just break it to him live on the air. Make sure you Yeah.
Yeah, you think you're so great. What about this?
Yeah.
And
perfect. Yeah.
Make them cry.
Yeah. So what else is happening?
Couple other stories. This one's kind of neat. And this was halfway debunked, I think. This was UFOvni Disclosure, which is a YouTube site, and it's not one we refer to often, but this is kind of an interesting video of some UFOs over Tulum, Mexico, another castle, a Mayan castle that's right on the beach. Oh man, I was just in Cozumel near this place, but it was a little too far away for us to get out there to visit. I wish I could have, but it's this beautiful castle. And recently there was a video, and supposedly a man's wife said she saw some flashes. He tried to take a video of it. Instead, he got this thing that seems like it's going through the cloud and these two strange flashes. So it's kind of weird. Some people are marking that off to some sort of reflection. People have to take a look and see what they think. Then there's a second video that from 2013. Roger Marsh wrote this story, and he saw that in 2013 there was another sighting, and this was a picture that was captured on Google Zoom, and he wrote about that. However, a lot of people have demonstrated that the Google Street video was most likely a bug on the camera housing. So some people disagree with that, but I think that it probably is. But the flashing video is a little more mysterious. So, yeah, people can check that out. on our website and this Friday on our UFO report. And I have just one more quickie I want to talk about, a fun picture. Yeah, this is kind of cool. So this is a leaked photo from the X-Files set. And it's a crashed UFO. Have you seen this?
I have, yes. Yep.
Pretty cool, huh? So, it's this crashed UFO, and I'm sure this picture is going to begin to circulate as a real crashed UFO at any moment now. But luckily, we were able to document prior to that it's actually a movie set from the X-Files. And it's just really exciting. I think people are excited about this. In fact, when I posted this story earlier today, George Knapp, who we referred to, reposted it on his Facebook, because I think we're just all so excited about the X-Files starting up. We're hoping there's lots of UFOs and aliens in it, and this just demonstrates there'll be UFOs in some manner.
Yeah. Hey, Alejandro, are you in like a diner or something? Do I hear clanking?
No, you do hear clanking. It is someone. We're setting up for our Lee Spiegel interview.
Ah, okay. Lee did it again.
I know, that son of a gun.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, man. This is good stuff. And,
all right, no problem.
All right, so hang in there for our guest, Ben Hansen, right after this music break. Ben Hansen, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You know, I had no idea you were even on or not. Glad to hear you.
You too. As long as I'm coming through clear, we're all good.
You are, yes. I just told everyone in the chat room to cross their fingers. It worked.
Well, I just moved my house to another apartment when I got married, so I had all my mics and computer parts in different boxes, so I'm glad we got it back together.
Well, I know how. Hey, congratulations! You just very recently got married.
I did. I was married on the 5th of May, and then I was with my wife for 5 days before I took off to Australia for several weeks. So, yeah, it was kind of fun.
Wow, that's something. Now, you probably broke a lot of women's hearts as soon as they found Ben Hansen was no longer available. How about that?
I don't know about that, but different.
Yeah, well, welcome to the show. We do have a call-in capability. Every once in a while, every like 2 or 3 shows, someone will call in. I'll just give that number out. It's 603-967-4030. And you can also jump in the chat room. We have a chat room right on the main page at podcastufo.com. And Ben, one of the things I thought we could talk about tonight is I love the analysis that you did. You and I haven't even discussed what we're going to talk about, but the analysis you did, first of all, of Bill Clinton and then of Obama. Can we talk a little bit about that? And it seems like Jimmy Kimmel had a heads up on that you were going to be looking at Obama.
Yeah, it was for those who haven't seen those or hadn't heard about it, it was kind of a daunting thing that happened because it was April of 2014, last year. Jimmy Kimmel interviewed President Clinton, and he said, I think it was on a Wednesday, maybe on a Monday, but he had 2 or 3 days heads up about what he was going to ask him. We don't know exactly if Jimmy Kimmel has his own personal interest in the UFO alien subject or if that's something the producers have kind of written up for him, or some have suggested that Bill Clinton and Obama, seeing that it would be reasonable to get all the questions before they're interviewed, that they specifically requested to be asked about the subject. So Jimmy Kimmel said, I'm going to talk to to Clinton. I'm going to ask him if he looked into the UFO files and blah, blah, blah. Well, so that interview took place. It was a little less than 3 minutes long, but he asked some pretty direct questions, and I did an analysis of it, which turned into a 36-minute long YouTube video. But it's, I think, just sitting under 100,000 views. I mean, for me, that's a lot of views. I don't really make a lot of videos. But so this past March, what happened was I was sitting there listening to the radio, and I hear that all the freeways up in LA are going to be closed because Obama's coming into town and he's going to be interviewed on Jimmy Kimmel. I really didn't think anything about it. I didn't think he was going to be asked the same questions or what was going to happen. I don't even really watch TV. So I went to sleep. Well, the next morning, I get a slew of emails. People sending me things. When are you going to do an analysis? What do you think about what he said? And all this. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I went online, and first of all, I found that the Los Angeles Times had done a story the day before on Jimmy Kimmel asking, hypothetically, well, what is Jimmy Kimmel going to ask Obama the same questions? And they referenced my analysis on Clinton. So then you get online and you watch, I watched Obama's interview, which is only about 50 seconds long, that part of the segment. But Jimmy Kimmel prefaces that part of one of the questions telling him there are people who are going to analyze everything you say, every gesture, blah, blah, blah. So he's referencing my video, which was kind of a daunting thing, like I said, to have the President of the United States laughing and saying, I know. And so I felt compelled. By this point, I was like, okay, got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how long, let's talk about, first of all, about Clinton. How long did it take you to study that? And I could just imagine you going back and forth to watch these expressions and hand gestures. And let's basically, you say right in the beginning of the film that you're not considered an expert, but you did have some training when you were with the FBI. But can you explain how that works?
Sure. Before I went to the FBI, I worked for several years investigating child sex crimes. So I was certified in what we call forensic interviewing technique. So interviewing victims and perpetrators, basically interrogations, trying to get confessions, and also, listening to witnesses, which does not include advanced degrees or anything of that nature. It's more kind of on-the-job experience. There are psychologists who research and study nonverbal, but the disclaimers I made were that I hope, and I believe that I know a little bit more than the everyday person, but at the same time, I have not done my own research. What I did was compiled what other people have studied about these different gestures, and the first thing you have to do is transcribe the whole interview, which you wouldn't think is very difficult. It was less than 3 minutes, but when you break it down, I add in all those little yeah, no, the stutters, the stuff that people don't put in a normal transcription because those are very important. And then you really do go by frame, and for people who think I was being really hypercritical, like I point out in the video, you should take a look at research done on microexpressions, because these are the thing that the TV show Lie to Me was based on.
Oh, right. I've watched a little bit of that. Yeah.
Well, the technical advisor, Paul Eckhart, developed microexpressions, and he's looking at things that are so minute. We're talking about thousandths of a second, where somebody has a little twitch, a little corner of their mouth goes up right before they speak or do something. So the depth that I got into is nowhere near what they analyze and say is very accurate. And so that's what we do. And we look not only at what they're saying, how they're saying it, and what their body's conveying. And basically we're looking for incongruencies. So we have to know the person, primarily how they communicate when they're not being deceptive or stressed. And then we look for a deviation in that. And with Bill Clinton, we had a lot of good examples of him being deceptive. And with Obama, we had a lot of good examples of him being stressed. So that's where we make the comparisons.
Right. And it seems to me, I may be wrong, but, that the Clintons actually did have, there is some evidence out there that they did have an interest in UFOs.
Yes, definitely. And before Clinton even talked about it on Jimmy Kimmel, we all, those of us who study this, we know about the Rockefeller Initiative. We know about John Podesta,
right?
And his involvement and how he was probably tasked as part of that initiative to go and do the things that he was saying happened on Jimmy Kimmel. He said he looked into Area 51, and he said he looked into Roswell. And that's where it gets really messy, because I'll give him the fact that he might be getting a little senile. He's getting up there in age. But he was very confused about the timelines. And we have those documented as to when the Office of Inspector General report came out about Roswell. And we have, we didn't have really much about his Area 51 inquiries, other than there was that lawsuit that was going on at the time. And he just says some things that were very odd, things that were not common knowledge, and then he mixes up the timeline and he starts talking about something, changes the subject, shows all these signs of being stressed, and then just tries to bail out of it.
And he's got a lot of practice at that. His years in the Oval Office, the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. He is one of the both Clinton and Obama, in my opinion, are some of the most eloquent speakers, smooth talkers that have been in the office, at least in my lifetime.
Yes, I would totally agree, and that's the argument that a lot of people use for and against, an analysis of this sort. Because if he is so eloquent, that could mean this must be something that really is stressful, because these signs are what we call leaking out. These emotions, the incongruencies are leaking through despite his attempts to control them. Or we could say, oh, he's just messing with us. He's so good at this. He's just, and my experience with interviewing people, though, however, is that most people are not good liars. They're just not. Even at your attempts to try and control something, if you know the person, they usually come off kind of contrived.
Mm-hmm. Now, is Clinton, you mentioned that you thought maybe he's just touched a little bit because of his age. How old is Clinton?
Oh, you've got me there. Gosh, he's got to be pushing late 60s. Is he 70 already? I don't know. He's up there.
Yeah, okay. But, okay, so, yeah, he's 68, actually. So, but anyway, I haven't really noticed that about him. He still seems pretty sharp, but you do consider him being a little bit confused?
Well, no, not necessarily. That's what kind of the those who object, the detractors, I guess, to my analysis are saying is, oh, he's just confused. He's senile. Well, we do know he's had a stroke before, and that's something I did not address in the video when we talk about one side of his body. You can see it in his eyes. If you pull up a picture of him lately, you'll see one half of his face is kind of drooped more than the other. One eyelid is kind of closed more. That's typical of a stroke.
Yeah. Right. I had no idea he had a stroke.
Yeah, that's what I've been told, and that will affect some things, but his memory is typical of what he was doing. Is what I call backing out of the dead end alley. Is when you start talking about something, because Clinton's style of speech, he doesn't like silence. So he's the type of guy who will just open his mouth, start talking, and hope that it leads somewhere. Whereas Obama maintains his composure more, and he uses more humor to try to fill in the gap and buy time. And so you'll see that in the Clinton video, and he'll start talking about Area 51, for example, and he'll say things like, well, the reason that, there's no aliens there, well, he says that later, but he says that people had to stop an hour outside of the base to put on special clothing because they're working on stealth technology there, but there's no aliens down there. Right. And which makes no sense. No sense. I mean, I talked to George Knapp, who broke the story, and he, of anybody, should know if any of the workers had come forward and say, yeah, there's special clothes you put on. But that was a detail that was added, which kind of makes you think that he's been advised by somebody and was given a whole lot of details that he can't keep straight, or that he realized he was saying things that wasn't public knowledge. And so you start to see the elevation of the stress go up. Now, that does not mean he knows anything about aliens or UFOs. It doesn't mean that he's covering something up. All that it means is that we can see his stress going up. He does not like the subject. So then we have to speculate as to why.
Right. And you said so he was stressed. And what did you say about Obama? What was his underlying reaction? Well,
I believe that Obama, we had 50 seconds basically to analyze from his interview, which is not much. But I did point out something I didn't think I was going to be able to take out of this. And a lot of people disagree, and that's fine. Because it's shot in high definition, when they post these videos online, I was actually able to zoom in on his chest as he's giving the interview, and you can see as he's breathing, you can actually count the breathing rate.
Right.
Now, it doesn't take much to get into the medical background on normal rates of breathing and all this stuff, and he's over twice at least the normal breathing rate for this brief period of time. And if you understand what stress breathing is, when someone hooks you up to a polygraph, it doesn't mean that you ask somebody and they lie, they're going to suddenly be out of breath, because he doesn't seem out of breath at all. In fact, it's kind of a physiological response that your body thinks you need more oxygen. So that's why we pay attention to when somebody's breathing rate goes up. Now, that's okay. That aside, yeah, it's interesting. But as you start to see how he uses these other techniques, such as humor, which, most people who, even if you don't like Obama, think you got to admit, he's kind of a likable guy. He likes to laugh and joke. He's easygoing. He uses humor a lot, and he uses it inappropriately. He gets in trouble a lot for the things he says, and I put a string of things together as to when he addresses the UFO subject, how he always has treated it. It's always been with derision, always, until one part of this interview. So he throws in a few jokes. I believe it was an attempt to kind of buy time and break the ice and kind of give him some time to relax into this subject. But when Kimmel finally corners him and says, "Did you look? Did you see? Did you explore?" And he stutters, he looks away, he turns his eyes down, and he says, I can't reveal anything. Now, people who thought he was joking the whole time, I would agree that he was joking in the beginning, because he's using it as a technique to buy time and loosen things up. However, when you get to this part here, and I break it down in the video and show, I believe it's a demeanor shift that's as great, if not greater, than what Bill Clinton did. And I do not believe that he was joking. If you take it into the context of what just happened with John Podesta leaving the White House, making his tweet, we know that Podesta was not joking as well. That would be going against everything that he stood for at the National Press Club and speaking out about disclosure. It would go against all the work he's done with the Clintons regarding a disclosure. So he's not joking when he tweets, my biggest regret of leaving in 2014, leaving the Obama administration is not obtaining UFO disclosure. So he leaves, and about 3 weeks later, or a month later, Obama appears on Jimmy Kimmel, and I don't think you can dismiss that as being non sequitur, because he really, in the context of this, it was not that far-fetched to assume that sometime during that whole year, Podesta grabbed the ear of the president and tried to push his agenda and say, hey, while I'm here, this is something I think you should really look into. So break that one sentence apart. I can't reveal anything. No U.S. president has ever stated about the UFO subject, I can't reveal anything. They just haven't. That's a very strange thing to say if your administration has already come out and has already said, we looked into the subject, there's no credible evidence of a cover-up, nor credible evidence that we have discovered extraterrestrial life. They said that, with the disclosure petition in his administration.
That's right. Yeah.
So why would you come out and say, I can't reveal anything? Why not say, I refer you to the petition that's on the White House website right now. There's nothing new to talk about.
Well, one of the things, going back to when Podesta said that tweet, I had Stephen Bassett on the following week, and Leslie Kane was very upset. She said that she has close ties to him, and they communicate quite a bit. And she said, knowing him, he was joking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
Huh.
So I'm here. You hear both sides of that. I did ask her if she talked to him directly to ask him, and she said no. But she said he has a sense of humor like that, and it could have been just a joke. And when I was watching Obama before I watched your video, and that's a pretty long video. I can't remember how long is that one.
That one's 40 minutes. So
right.
Sit back, grab a drink.
Yeah, it's actually good, and I can link these on this in the show notes. I will do that. I'll put those up in the show notes tomorrow. But when I watched Obama, without even looking into it, I just thought, well, he's a funny guy. He's got a good sense of humor. I didn't, my first reaction was that he wasn't hiding anything, and then I watched your video, and it really made me think. And so I do suggest to the listener to, like you said, sit back, have a drink, watch the videos, and you make some very valid points with these very, small signals these people are doing. And it's kind of like, in a way, it's sort of like a polygraph without being hooked up, because someone, they ask people questions and they see how they are in a normal answering truthful questions, how the pulse and everything else reacts, and then when they lie, or then that's when everything kind of there's fluctuations. So in a way, you're kind of doing that, right? Through body language.
Yeah, and if anything does leak through, I actually think it's more significant because the stress levels are ratcheted up many, many more times. When you're actually sitting in a chair with a polygraph or having an interrogation and you're being accused of some criminal thing or taking a deposition in court, the stress levels are increased greatly. This was supposed to be for entertainment. This is supposed to be fun, loose. He's talking about Kanye West. Clinton's talking about his favorite food is cheese. And so you'll see that relaxation take place earlier in the interviews, but there's a very marked difference and shift in demeanor with both of them. And that's why I think it is pretty significant. Now, Alejandro, who you just had on, he disagrees. He's one of them who respectfully disagrees with me, that he thinks he's joking the whole time. And that's why we can't rely just upon the body language. You have to bring in the context. Everything has to be looked at in the context of how it was said and the words that somebody chooses. And that's why I think that one phrase is gold. That one phrase, I can't reveal anything. It leaves us with really just two possibilities. Number one, Obama likes to be the cool kid in high school and make you think that he knows something, but that's just kind of his tagline for everything because he wants you to think he's in the know. Maybe he's trying to divert people from talking about the economy problems or whatever. Or that was a genuine reaction because he's had conversations with people that have told him in no uncertain terms, don't worry about it, Mr. President, or you don't need to go there, you don't have a need to know. That type of reaction would be kind of typical of somebody who's kind of like, I don't appreciate this, I don't like it, but I'm going to joke about it because I'm not at liberty to talk about it.
Up on the message board we had, someone made kind of a good point, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on this, because you mentioned earlier, which I believe is always in the case of a president or a royalty or anything like that, that they do have the questions a day or two in advance. So why couldn't someone be more relaxed if they know that they're going to be asked a question like this?
That's my point exactly. You would expect them to be more relaxed. You'd expect them to be more rehearsed. Obama especially loves it when he has his teleprompter, but if you take that away, you should still have time. If you've been given the questions, you should have time to, if you're going to tell jokes, to perfect your jokes. When somebody's not a great actor, you can see that. Well, I should say you can see when somebody is trying to control their response in such a way that wouldn't seem spontaneous. Like, I believe Obama really was being genuine. You saw some genuine smiles like he normally does when he's having fun. You see everything that indicates he's being genuine, including when he turns away and says that he can't talk about something. I think that was genuine. Right.
Didn't he look down at his feet or something?
He did briefly, and I point out in the video that's not uncommon for Obama. He looks down 50% of the time when he's in interviews, but there's another reason for that, and that gets into talking about neurolinguistic programming and where he's trying to access in his mind. So it's not necessarily I'm avoiding eye contact with you because I don't like to look at you when I'm, stressed. It's probably a combination of things, but that in itself does not, indicate that he's being untruthful. I think he was being truthful.
Well, great work. It was really very entertaining to watch that, and it's. Just one other question: has anyone else attempted to do what you've done with these videos?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of in that degree. I think I have seen a couple videos where people, might take, one phrase, or somebody was trying to make the case that that there's a grand deception going on. There's no such thing as aliens, and that this is part of, kind of angels and demons thing. But nobody else I know of has done this, and that's why, like I said, I kind of felt like that morning after the interview, I was like, well, if nobody does this, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? Somebody has to say something, and just let the people decide.
Someone up on the message board, and I thought we could get into this a little bit later, but we might as well bring it up now. We'll shift gears here. And in regards to your night vision technology that you sell, I hope that's going well. We have a banner. I believe we have a banner up on our website for you. And if that is selling well, are customers saying that they're seeing UFOs with them?
Yes. typically what we see with the night vision is because the Generation 3 stuff enhances light by about 50,000 times. And it's getting better. In fact, we just came out with a new one that really, really decreases what we call the halo effect around bright objects. So what we're seeing most of are these objects that are about the size and height of a satellite. You'll see a lot more satellites tracking, but like I've seen before, you'll see these objects that will go in a straight line and suddenly they'll start changing course. They will slightly deviate. They'll do S-turns. I don't buy into people who don't try to do their own debunking at first, and they just say, "Oh, it was powering up. It's having a war with the other UFOs." And you have to know a lot about iridium satellite flares. You have to know about how the satellite might turn on its axis, and the panels are actually reflecting, and that's what looks like it's pulsating. And so, but at any rate, people are recording these. We have hookups to iPhones, to DSLR cameras, and stuff that makes it very simple to record.
Wow, iPhones. Wow. I had no idea you had an iPhone app for that. It's not an app, but it hooks right up to your iPhone camera?
It's not an app. It's sort of a bracket that will go on the eyepiece of the scope.
I see. Kind of like I've seen lenses that go on iPhones and things like that.
Yeah, for the microscopes and all those things.
So for the new technology you just spoke about, is that some type of polarizing effect or something?
For the latest night vision?
Right.
No, what they've done is the night vision has an ion barrier, so the light bombards this kind of barrier that turns it into electromagnetic to a pulse that is read by the computer chips. And from what I understand, is they tried to make this ion film thinner and thinner and thinner until they just basically got rid of it altogether. But it's not been until now that they've been able to have a product that is not too fragile, that doesn't break. So that's where they're at on it.
I see. Now, as a follow-up to the last question, is there any collection of these videos anywhere that have been taken with an iPhone?
Yeah, there's a great article. I'm not sure if Lee Spiegel has published it yet on Huffington Post, but he should pretty soon. I don't want to give it away for him, but I sold one of the scopes to a gentleman who's not too far from where I am here in Newport Beach, California, and he's been filming these strange sort of orb-like objects. If I could find where his website link is, I'd give it to you. But he's been posting these for quite a while now, and he has recorded some quite incredible things. Lee also did a story on a military guy who's out in North Carolina who filmed a triangle that seems to be kind of turning. We're trying to decide if that triangle was turning or if it was just his camera position. But the reason it's important is because it's a pretty quick turn, and it's silent. So he may have captured one of these silent triangles. And on our Show Factor Faked, we reviewed another night vision video that was similar, that is debatable whether it was people hang gliding at night. So the tricky thing is having this with you, because most of these sightings only last a couple seconds. So you really have to be out there looking for it, or have this thing ready to go, because the things I've seen are over within 4 seconds.
Wow. You want to talk about a couple of ones you've seen? Was that
sure.
The triangle? Was that one you saw?
I have seen a triangle in Huntington Beach, California, just a few years ago, and it was spectacular. It was everything that people talk about. It was the strangest thing, again, is people explain, it was completely silent. It was about 1,000 feet over my head. My now wife also witnessed it with me. We were jogging on a track at night at the high school, and I had stopped just to stretch, was looking up at the sky. It had 3 lights on each point, and the inner part in the middle was either painted the same color as the sky above, or it had some type of technology that allowed it to be transparent, because I could see a defined edge, but just like people say, it was literally transparent, in the middle. So
hear this all the time. I mean, that seems to be a reoccurring thing. There was even in the Phoenix Lights, when it went over between the two peaks, there was a similar description. If I'm correct.
No, it's very true. The people theorizing on the propulsion system talk about light being bent around it, maybe because the propulsion bends the light, or maybe it's just an intentional something rather. But my question again is if this is military, why would they be flying it over a very populated area like this if they want to keep it a secret? Mm-hmm. It was cruising fast, and I've had two other experiences. My first one was in the Caribbean. I saw one of these satellite-type objects, and it was in a straight line until it started doing S-turns in the sky. So you consider the G-forces at play there, not conventional at all.
I had a show producer on, and also some of that writes for Larry David and all that, and he wrote. He had a movie called Trekkies, and so I had him on. He's a skeptic basically, and he said every single triangle that they see out there, people see out there, is something secretive military. He said that is the answer 100%. Boy, I got a lot of email after that.
Well, that's great. It's great to have an opinion, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you take a look at the military mindset and how they strived so hard to keep Area 51 a secret, because they have this huge expanse of land, and now we've got, dubbed Area 52 in Dugway, Utah, and these places that lots of space, you can go fly your planes and keep them a secret, at least from the public, maybe not from foreign satellites, but it kind of defeats the purpose. If you're going to fly these over downtown Phoenix, mm-hmm. over Bulgaria, over the Hudson Valley, over Illinois, Belgium. It's not really a secret anymore, is it? If that's what you decide to do with it.
Exactly. I think I brought up something like that to him, and of course he had some type of answer. Ben, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm wondering if we could squeeze a couple more minutes out of you. We're coming up on the top of the hour, because there's just a couple more questions I want to ask. Is that a possibility?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Before the top of the hour, though, I'd like to ask you if you wouldn't mind repeating. When I first had you on the show, you told us a story about your grandfather, and I wondered if you wouldn't mind repeating that story. Basically, his involvement and with his father and with your father. The things he said and all that.
Sure. Well, it kind of starts out in the mid-'90s, early '90s. My grandfather served in the Army, World War II, retired, served in the Marines for a little bit. Actually, that was where he was in World War II, and then retired and joined the Air Force as a civilian logistical technician. So he worked from approximately 52 to the 80s. And he was based in Hill Air Force Base, Utah. And growing up, my dad, it was him and his two sisters. So sometime around about 1964, 1965, my grandfather comes to him and says, "Son, I've been asked to be a part of a special team that might be called upon in times of an emergency, and I'll have to leave, and I can't tell you where I'm going or when I'll be back. So you're the man in charge of the house." And my dad said, "Well, is this like a nuclear threat emergency type of thing?" And he says, "Yeah, something like that." So the summer of 65, it was the first time he remembers that my grandpa got a call. And he remembers him going to the airport, and on that occasion, he remembers he went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So everyone who knows about the Roswell documents, legends, and and such. We know that most of the debris went to Wright-Patterson. It was the home of the Foreign Technology Division. It still is, home of Project Blue Book. And he made several trips over those decades to Wright-Patterson. My father was given a phone number. At times he would call the operator and say, I need to talk to Merlin Hansen, and the operator would say, which building? Building 18. Well, which 18? A, B, C, D? I don't know. I just need to talk to him. So his exchanges over the years, when he'd come back, he was very quiet. He said he often worked alone, only talked to people by their first names. Dad didn't really think much about it, except that he was very hard to get a hold of, including when my grandmother nearly passed away. He couldn't get a hold of him to tell him that she was in the hospital. And my dad was very upset about this. So I don't know how much time we have. I could tell you one little thing.
Yeah. We got time.
Okay. So the one particular summer, my father was on the high school basketball team, and he remembers because his dad had never gone to I think his dad had gone to the games, but he really wanted him to see this game, but he couldn't because he was out at Wright-Pat. And my grandmother was sick on another occasion to where she was in the hospital, like I said, and he couldn't get a hold of him. So when he came back, grandfather came home, and my father just kind of let him have it. He just said, where were you? We almost lost Mom. I was here alone. Grandfather looks him in the eyes and he says, I told you I'm not always available when I go out on these TDYs, these temporary assignments. And he says, what do you mean you're not available? There's phones everywhere. And he said, there's not always phones where I'm working underground. And some people still debate whether there's an underground complex at Wright-Patterson. That to me is not debatable. Don Schmidt and Tom Carey's book,
right?
Thoroughly describes people. There's several layers of levels of hangars. Now they did this for several reasons. One of them was they kind of played a shell game with the Russians in the Cold War. So when the satellites would fly over, they didn't want them to know how many jets they had parked out on the tarmac. So they'd bring them in and they'd take them down several levels to park them. Well, so my dad, just kind of put this away. Didn't think much about it until the 90s when my grandfather contracted liver cancer, eventually spread to his brain and pancreas or prostate, I believe. And they would go to the gym to try and exercise and keep his health up as he was going through chemo. And they would also sit down and they'd watch shows like Unsolved Mysteries. And this is when we first really started hearing about the Roswell account and Wright-Patterson. And so my dad would say, hey, you were out there, weren't you? Like, is any of this true? And my grandfather generally would just kind of laugh it off. He sometimes would just kind of get uncomfortable. This particular time when they were at the gym, my father had asked him several things. And he looked at him and he said, I think it's time we go. They were just having a great conversation, enjoying themselves. And he says, it's time we leave. So he knew when he says this, you don't push, my grandfather. So they left. And over the last little bit that we had him alive, there wasn't much of the subject being brought up again, except for sometimes he would nod his head yes. That's interesting, he would say, on the TV shows when they talk about something. And then other times he'd say, that's completely BS. They don't know what they're talking about. And that kind of was a way my dad thought he was sort of confirming to him some things, but he never outright spoke about it. Well, fast forward now to, I believe it was 1996, and I had gone out that night. I was planning on stopping by to see my grandfather in the hospital, and cell phones were were rather new. I think I had a 30-minute plan. So I had just made a call to my dad to see if I could stop by the hospital on my way home from a date. And he said, "Your grandfather is actually just passed away. Sorry I missed him, but I had an amazing experience with him. I was here in the room alone." And he didn't tell me at that time exactly what they talked about because it was just one of many things. But he had been pretty silent as, he starts to breathe slower and get closer. And at one point, he took my dad's hand and he looked him in the eyes and he said, "I know what you've been asking me." And he said, "Son, you need to know we're not alone. And don't be afraid." And in the context of it, my dad is absolutely positive. He wasn't talking about there's life after death. They already believed, had a strong belief in that. He was talking about all the things he'd been pestering him about his work and everything else. And he maintained his oath. I mean, my dad and I have always kind of searched around the house looking for like the national treasure, looking for a clue. Maybe he left us something. And all we've been able to come up with really is we've been able to line up, and it's speculative, of course, but we've been able to line up the times that he was gone to some actual events that, in my mind, it would be great if it were actually meant something. But, for example, we have 1965, December, I believe it was, and we have the Kecksburg. Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, he was called just 1 or 2 days after that event and was called out to Wright-Patterson. We have witnesses saying that debris went through the back gate into Wright-Pat, and he was gone for a good week or two after that event. And we're getting into finding more about what he did in his work, and basically he was a logistical technician for projects and inventory and for new equipment. So when a new project would come in, they had to allocate space for it, and all of the Air Force's assets had to be inventoried in their computer database. So he was one of the key guys across the country that knew the system inside and out and developed new ways of inventorying and allocating resources. And you have to ask yourself, well, there's either only one of him, or there's some reason why they're pulling people in from across the country, clear across the country, to work for only a week or two on special things.
Right.
And that kind of tends to, go along with how the government operates in compartmentalization.
Ben, you've told me that story twice, and I got to tell you, I get goosebumps, and I can't remember any other time on the show where I get goosebumps. So thank you. So we're going to take a quick little music break here, but we're going to be right back. And I'd like to talk to you about some shows and what you're up to. So hang on just 1 minute. We'll be right back. So that's it for the free part of the show. You can listen for free every single week on the Dark Matter Radio Network from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the second part of the show, Ben stays on for most of the show. I think it's only like 10 or 12 minutes at the end where I get into the old UFO files. But if you'd like to support the show and hear that for free, it can cost you only $1 a month or more. And that information is right on our sidebar at podcastufo.com. Thank you all very much for listening, and I enjoyed tonight's show, and we'll see you right here on podcastufo.com every week if you listen to a podcast, or on the Dark Matter Radio Network on Wednesdays, again, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks a lot, and keep your eyes to the sky.